Welcome to the Celebration of You. I'm your host, Holly Dowling. I'm thrilled to share with you incredible people from all over the world who are living and leading extraordinary lives. From overcoming immense adversity to discovering the secret sauce to leading with courage and grace. Their stories are going to bring you hope and inspiration. Now let the stories begin. Welcome, everybody, to the Celebration of You. And as always, I get so excited about the amazing, incredible people I get to meet around the world at the most serendipitous moments. So you'll soon know this beautiful, amazing guest of today, how I met her. And prior to diving into this interview, I always like to take a moment to thank everyone around the world, the comments you're sending in, the comments on iTunes, the messages we get on the website, the comments I'm hearing when I see you in various cities. Just thank you. Thank you for everyone listening. Because of you, the show continues to thrive, and we're now in 87 countries around the world. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you for realizing that there's people out there, when they share their story, we get hope, and we get a new light that can give us hope in some of our darkest hours. So just thank you for being there, and continue to leave comments and continue to let me know. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so today's guest. So when I said serendipitous moments, you know, you never know who you're going to meet and where you're going to be. So this beautiful woman, Elle Zimmerman, that I'm about to introduce you to, who I get to brag on and has some really amazing stories to share. We met. Well, Elle, you're out there. Hi, darling.
Hello, Holly. So happy to be here.
So excited to have you. And it's just so funny how we met. So Elle and I met, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I was speaking at Allie Brown's event in Arizona. And that's when I met you, right? You were there.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And then we had, you see somebody and you just go, oh my gosh, I have to know who they are. So we end up having these great conversations. We've stayed in touch. And then Allie was doing a workshop, and I got to pop in for a part of a day. And who do I see but the beautiful Elle? And I'm like, okay, this is it. We're meant to see each other. So, yes. And then we had a conversation that just blew my mind. So first of all, my friend, you look as beautiful and as gorgeous as ever. And being that you're an actress and you've been on commercials and you've done all these amazing things, I wouldn't expect it differently. But what I love is to shine a spotlight on you right now. Before we go into some of the goodness, talk to us. Tell us what you're passionate about now and what you're doing in your current world, because you've done a lot of amazing things.
Oh, Holly, you're so sweet. You always make me feel so wonderful, and you just light up the room around me. And I just really appreciate that. And thank you for having me today. And my life is so exciting right now. I've got so many different things going on in different directions. And I've got, the last 15, 20 years I've spent executive producing my husband's career. But over the last year, I've been really focusing on what is the gift that I'm bringing to the world through all the different skills and things that I've learned through navigating his brand. I'm working with a lot of different audiences, different types of people, taking kind of my art background, moving into helping women uncover their creative purpose, uncover their creativity and what they've been born to bring to the world. And at the same time, I've got this really interesting thing going on the other side, which is working with experts and thought leaders that are primarily speaking with corporations, and they have a great message or an expertise that they want to bring to the masses through their audiences or their the organizations that they're training or speaking with. And so I'm building these cool, like digital media experiences through them. So it's like on one side, I'm helping women uncover their creative purpose and what the gifts they have to bring to the world. And on the other side, I'm actually doing it with what I've learned and sort of, the knowledge I've gained over the years working with my husband in the corporate market. So it's really cool. And then I'm also managing 3 teenagers, which is like a whole nother job of its own. So, but
and you don't even look old enough.
Time.
It is exciting time, but you don't look old enough. Every time I see you, I'm like, what? You have 3 teenagers. And by the way, when I think about what you just said, your voice, the inflection in your voice, Elle, it just lit up as you were talking about what you're passionate about and what you're doing. And when I think about, just getting to know you and knowing that, think about like going back to one of your most memorable things that you did and being on tour with Up With People. It was all right. Think about how this has come full circle, friend.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Up With People.
How was that? That was one of my dreams, by the way, and I never got to do it. Tell me about that.
Oh, it's so, just a little digression here. So Facebook is so cool because I am reconnected with the 100 people that I traveled with. And I traveled almost 25 years ago with 100 people from all over the world. And as we traveled, we lived in host families. We did community service and then performed a show in the different communities. And at that time, I was like 17 years old, just turned 18, and I had never been on a plane. I had never seen a mountain. I had never seen the ocean, let alone go to Europe. And so that year was this incredibly pivotal experience in my life. And the beauty of social media, I'm still connected with like almost 100% of the people that I traveled with. And that was the experience that really told me, one, I love to serve. I love to give back, but I also love to perform. And it was after that tour that I came back and went into a conservatory to study musical theater.
It's crazy, like how and I remember when that was, so huge, and to know how pivotal that moment was for your life. I mean, think about everything you've done since and how it just kind of ties. That's why I was smiling. I'm like, this all ties to that when you think about your passion for people. And then you went on to, let's face it, you are a proclaimed and very renowned executive producer. You have produced I have to give you kudos because for all the women listening out there, I just want you to know you're going to want to bow down to Elle because she is the woman that has taken her husband's platform and turned him into a #1 best-selling author. He's a renowned speaker around the world. And you've continued to be that person to just lift other people up, Elle. That's what I see in you. You lift and elevate others, and this is your year. It's your year.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's time to lift you. That's why I wanted to celebrate you.
Yeah, it's great. I just want to tell you a really quick story about Up With People that's so interesting. So I went to a little college, and this is something that I've tried to infuse into my life even today. So I was the campus tour guide for this little college in Indiana, and I was taking a family on a tour, and I saw the group of people from Up With People setting up their stage. And the way it normally works is you're supposed to watch the show, go through an interview process. They decide if they want to, invite you to travel. And I saw them and I felt the energy in that room, and I knew I had to be a part of it. I knew somehow, no matter what, I was going to be a part of it. So I went back, did the interview, didn't see the show. I held up the bus to the fraternity sorority party bonfire so I could interview with Up With People. And sure enough, I was invited, and I hadn't gone through the normal protocol. And I remind myself of that experience so many times when I think I stood there and I felt this energy, and I trusted my gut, and I went for it, and I made it, and I made that happen. And so as we get older, sometimes we let other things cloud that instinct and that I guess maybe it's the positive confidence or energy or direction. And I have to tell you, I go back to that moment. I'm so glad you brought it up, because I remind myself, I know what's the right next step for me. I just have to be willing to pause and listen and pay attention and then move.
Yes.
And so that's what I've been trying to do this year, is really tap into me and what my next step is.
I love that you just said pause and listen and then be ready to make the next move. And isn't it funny though, Elle, how I'm going back to when I was that age, right? And I was the little girl. I don't know if you know this, because you were on cruise ships too. I was a cruise director. And it was right. And it was my dream when I was a little girl. I'd watched Love Boat in third grade in the basement, and I used to dream of being Julie. And I share this because by the time I was getting ready to finish college, right, like everybody thought I was crazy. And I share this story with adults and kids, but my mantra, tell me no, watch me go. I had the strong nudge, and nobody, and I don't ever blame people, but nobody really ever encourages you. Like I'd go to meet with people and say, how do you go get a job on a cruise ship? And they're like, get your head out of the clouds. Oh, right. There's a 10-year waiting list. I mean, I heard every excuse.
Yeah.
And if we let, here I go. You know what I'm going to say. If we let the world should on us, SHOULD, we will never listen and follow the nudge.
Yep.
And you did it, so you know you can do it again.
Yeah. And I knew I loved you, and now I really know why. Because I so can see, one, just you as an amazing cruise director, but just that you did that. You said, I want to do this, and you figured it out. That's so cool, Holly.
But it's same with you. Like the story is just so resonating because, you know, I like you, my love, it's never too late to dream. And that's the one thing, like if we could go on a mission for women and men to never give up dreaming, it's never too late to go after the nudge. You just have to be intentional. And you could have every excuse right now, Elle, to not be taking this year for you. And I hope everybody listening is really going to grasp the profound moment of this because, you know, you're lifting your husband's career. You've been the backbone to create this amazing platform. You've got 3 teenage kids. It's so easy to put ourselves on the back burner. And now it's time for you. And that's kind of cool that I get to celebrate you now versus 2 or 3 years ago, because this is your year.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the hard part because it's, you know, I have the luxury of supporting this very established, very successful business, which is the speaking, you know, the consulting career that we've built for my husband's brand. So I have the luxury of starting something new, but it's still really scary. It's still stepping into spaces that are unfamiliar. I know it's where I need to go, but it is that shaky ground getting my footing. And each step I take, I get stronger and stronger and stronger. And I just continue the conversation, and I continue to put myself in places that actually make me feel a little nervous and a little scared. And, yeah. So
I love that.
Yeah. And I think my acting career also prepared me for that because, you know, and it's not that you have to be an actor to take risks, but as an actor, you know that going in, you're going to be rejected 100 times before you hear one yes. Mm-hmm. So I call that my no muscle. I've really exercised my no muscle. I've heard no a lot. So it's just knowing that one more no is closer to the yes, you know.
I love that. And I mean, let's face it, you know, I have a brother that's an actor and he would say the same thing. I mean, you have to really, you talk about, you guys could go on a tour about what resilience really means. You really have to have a high degree of resilience. And yet you gain so much from these opportunities to, as you said, flex the muscle of no. Well, it's interesting because as you're saying this, it's taking me to this pivotal conversation we had literally in the ballroom hallway a couple months ago, and your passion to, you know, you're doing a lot with some big corporations and you're really passionate about bringing women together and having what you and I talked about, right? It's kind of one of the avenues that I've been doing a lot of work in as well, which is bringing women together and not having it spent all on professional development. What they're really wanting is time to pause and kind of like rekindle who we are as people, like that personal side of things. And, you know, I might get a little emotional because the story you shared with me, I said, we have to share this with the world because there are so many, and it's not just women. There are so many human beings, men and women, that have experienced what you shared with me and were scared to death to talk about it or afraid that that could have been us. And the shame. So, you know, take me to, without giving names of companies, can you kind of guide us through this experience and this event you were doing and kind of what percolated from this that we can share?
Yeah. So I was hired to speak to a very large group of women for a women's sort of development empowerment day for a very large corporation where I live. And, one of their locations is near my home. And so one day I was driving and there were police and there were news trucks and when I figured out what was going on, it's really terrible to share that a woman had left her infant child in the car, and she drove to work and she left her child in the car all day and didn't even know until she returned to the car and it was too late. And it was all over the news. And of course, I see that, and because I'm just a highly emotional person anyway, I'm instantly crying, not just because I felt empathetic for this woman, but because I did the same thing. And thank God, I'll say quickly, my child did not die. My child was okay. But I just was brought to I just stopped and thought, okay, what can I do? And I immediately blogged about it. I wrote about it. And I had this real desperate need to speak grace and forgiveness for this woman, because people get so quick to judge and, I would never do that, or I couldn't imagine doing that, and how could she do that? And it just, I know how she can do that because I did that. And so I wrote and wrote and wrote about the day that I had a 3-month-old. I had 2 tiny little babies at the same time. My husband was starting his speaking career, so he was traveling extensively. And he came home and said, go take a break. But of course, take the baby, because we can't leave all 3 kids with my husband. So I took the baby. But I get in the car to just drive, this is like 5:00 at night, but it's August. My son was born like in the end of May. And so it's a hot August day. And I'm driving around and I go into a couple stores and I walk in and I shop around and I come back and I go into another department store and I'm in there for a good hour and a half. And I walk out and I hear this, wah, 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 this like screaming of this baby. And what I do is I stop and I say, who left their baby in a car? Oh my God, what mother would do that? And I'm walking straight to my car when I realize that's my baby. I'm that mother. And I tell you what, I got to that car, I pulled my son out and I laid on the floor of that van, hiding for fear and also just clinging to him, crying, just thinking, thank God, because it didn't even hit me as deeply as it did until the day I drove by, and that mother wasn't as lucky.
Yeah.
And that mother was now being, called out and questioned and challenged by the media, by the public. And so part of my desire to write this blog was to say, it can happen. And what this woman needs more than anything is grace and love and forgiveness. And the interesting part of the story that I shared with you, Holly, was it didn't end there.
Yeah, I know.
Because I had this opportunity to speak in front of this corporation, a group of women from this facility, from this exact location. And we were speaking about transition and change, and they're going through a lot of, structure changing. And so we were there to talk about the personal things, to talk about the vulnerabilities, but yet they really didn't want us to. Yeah. When I said, I asked the committee, can I speak about this? Can I bring up conversation? Can we really, pour love and support among each other to show that we're here? Because we're all women, we're all balancing these crazy lives, particularly with this group of women, they're asked to produce at such a high level that they often are living on what I would call autopilot.
Yes.
And this woman, I believe that, the routine changed. She showed up at work. She was on autopilot and again, working even more than a regular 8-hour day. And these women, shockingly to me, didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to have that conversation. They said it was too vulnerable. It was too emotional. And I really challenged them, but it just was not going to be acceptable. So I had some private conversations with people, and it was more one-on-one opportunities. And then I did, after the event, and, share my blog, and a lot of the women were on my mailing list and got it. And
good.
Yeah, but it was very interesting to me how quick people weren't comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I'm just sitting here. I'm still with tears streaming down my face because, Elle, when you shared that, and I sat there and I said, how many of us, to be judged, have done that because we are in autopilot. We're a hamster wheel in life right now, and we're just so out of touch. And there isn't a human being that I could judge for what happened to her. You and I are the lucky ones. And I shared with you, I was there with 2 little boys in car seats, right? And I thought I'll just run into a store really quick so I didn't have to get them out. But it was like, you come out and you're like, oh my God, right? The temperature in the car, and you just live, you feel like you're the only one. And when you shared this, and I said to you, one of my son's teachers in high school growing up was horrific. The father was the teacher, and he drove and completely forgot to take his child to daycare in the back seat because it wasn't his normal responsibility, right? It was the other, whoever's it is. I love that you said what this woman needs is grace. And by the grace of God, I don't believe any of this was intentional. This is just what happens when we are completely lacking sleep. We are lacking all elements of we're just so in a zone. And I just thank you for, when I looked at you and I hugged you and I go, I love that you've been so real and authentic, and we've got to get this story out because there are so many people living with this shame, whether it was 30 years ago, yesterday. Fortunately, we're blessed because ours, didn't have a horrific ending. But it's kind of like what you said a little while ago. I want to pause and I want to listen. If we could start a movement right now in this moment, that life is so damn precious. Pause, stop worrying and obsessing, and start living and being, because it's these moments that we realize, oh my God, what just happened. Right. And how fleeting and how quickly things can change. Yes. Yeah. And Holly, you speak with, in small groups, and you're surrounded with corporate leaders all the time. And what sort of surprised me was that, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but it's almost like the corporations are almost promoting this autopilot. Because the women that I speak to, they talk about, because I'm going in and having conversations about creativity and how can we express our true selves, and that they often say to me, well, we're really not given space or room or time to do that. They really don't want us to do that. So is that coming from within the woman, or is that coming from the corporation? And that's a question that I've been asking a lot is, what's happening that's creating this over consuming, use of our space and time and energy, and how can we help people to take more ownership of that commodity in their life? Well, it's interesting you just say this, because I just came off of, and I do really huge events and then I do small events, and I just came off of 3 cities, 2 huge events, one, maybe 100. The other ones were big, of which one was predominantly women in the IT arena with a lot of men there to support this big event. The other one was all men. So it's interesting, the dichotomy. And here's why I'm going to say, to answer your question, Elle, is that what I'm finding is that what they think they need, and corporations are saying legally, we can't talk about this or this. But what they're saying is, but what, Holly, we want you to come do that thing you do. Can you just come in? You get people talking. And I think, Elle, if we stay aligned with our soul's highest calling, and that's been my biggest lesson in the last 5 years, I actually turn clients down. Because if I'm going to come into the space, I'm going to be there to do what my soul's been put here to do. And if that doesn't align and they want me to be or do something else, then I'm going to graciously decline and say that I'm not here to serve you at the highest and best. And what's happened is some of these big corporations, trust me when I say this, and I think it has to start in maybe smaller groups, and then it will manifest to whatever happened, just change these leaders' lives. We want you back. That's what's happening. And now can you come and do it at a bigger event? And I mean, I just spoke at a huge event and almost all men. And in my 1 hour keynote, there was a pin that could drop at moments because I said, I'm done with strategy. You're all CEOs of amazing companies. You have enough strategy. It's time to get back to the heart and the human being that you are and your people are. And what I'm realizing is that's what people are hungry for. I said it once, Elle, but it's like, and I think you'll totally get this. Human beings are malnourished, and I mean emotionally malnourished. We're spending so much time focusing on all the other things, we have forgot the human being. So what I would say is you had these one-off conversations and allow things to continue to manifest and organically come about with this particular client, but don't let that stop you from going in and starting to have conversations. You're a great conversationalist. I mean, I could see that being your niche, right? You're kind of like the igniter of conversations, and those robust conversations are what they're not getting. So continue to keep being a light and a spark because we need you out there. And this show and this interview is going to be a tough one for people to hear because we're talking about something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, Elle, but it's going to provoke conversations and people will come out of the woodwork saying, all right, I need to admit, or I thank God I finally can, take this out of my heart that I've been hovering, like the shame. So,
or even just a little bit of, compassion toward the woman who does something like that, or the man, or, because I find there's so much judgment toward this woman that did this, that, even if they've not been in the shoes.
Exactly.
So, that's so interesting that they're wanting you to kind of get back to the basics. Like it's almost like we talk about in marketing, because I've been working with Allie Brown, a good friend of yours. We talked about meeting at the workshop. And a lot of the conversations through the coaching group of hers that I'm a part of is that marketing is getting back to good old fashioned relationship building. Get on the phone, talk to people, send a note card.
Yes, exactly.
Look people in the eye. Yeah. So you're bringing that back in an even more global way.
Oh, yes. And honestly, to your point, I think that's what we're needing to do behind closed walls with our kids, right? Like this is what the kids are missing, and the human touch and communication. Like people are being proposed to and broken up with over text messaging. I mean, look at what's happened so we could spend a whole day talking about this, but I just feel the moment I met you and then continue to see you and the gift that you're bringing human beings, Elle, and I know your passion is especially with women, the gift that you're giving women to be vulnerable, to know that you are brilliant, you're amazing, and you're beautiful, and you're also human. This is the space that you're moving into in the biggest, most beautiful way. And I kind of really just want to affirm that because my listeners, myself, I want to keep supporting you as you take this journey. And I don't know what that looks like, but for anybody that wants to reach out to you, how can they learn more about you and engage, because you're going to be a client before we know it. I'm going to have you start thinking about what you and I talked about before the interview, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Holly. Yeah. Well, currently, the best way is I am actually, if you're on Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Creative Uncovery where we're really, I'm not selling anything there. I'm just really engaging in the conversation about what is the conversation about creativity. What is the maybe it's a transition or, a life purpose that I call it Creative Uncovery, the place for the vaguely unsatisfied.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
So it's a place to sort of, and again, it's sort of following my journey that I've had, where I'm tapping into what is that gift, what is the voice that is coming forth from within me, and as I've moved through it, I'm helping other women do the same thing. So if there's a woman listening, it's there's a couple men in the group actually too.
Good.
But that would be the best way to join me. And that's on my, you can get to that through my website, which is ellzimmerman.com.
Love that. Well, and I know people will reach out and they can always come out to our website and let me know as well. But Elle, one of the things I love to ask my guests at the end to wrap it up, and it's going to be fascinating to hear, because I think you had a really pivotal moment at 17 years old in your life and continue to have pivotal moments. But if you were to go back to your young 20-year-old self, and who you are today and what you've become and what you've learned and the journeys you've been on, what advice would you give that young 20-year-old young woman based on what you know today?
Oh, Holly, you ask great questions. I would say, again, I think what I said before, that you know what you're designed to bring into the world. It's been wired in you. It's been knit while you were in the womb. And just that pause, listen, and go.
God, if we could all just take that. It is there. And we did it at a young age. And then we have to learn to redo it and continue to do it as we get older. Right, Elle?
Oh, absolutely. And then, that we talked about the busyness and the clutter of life makes it even harder. So it really is important to just find those moments of pause and openness to listen. And then the courage. Courage. To go. Yeah.
And not let the world or other people who have good intention that don't want to see us skin our knees or, make a bad decision. But you've got to really listen. I love that. Pause, listen, and go. I'm going to be reminded of that. We all need that. You are a gift. You are a blessing. I am so grateful to have you in my life and excited to share this with the world. Thank you, Elle, for being with me today.
Thank you, Holly, so much. What a joy. I'm so happy to know you and be here today.
Well, you are my gift. So have an amazing week. And I can't wait to hear what the listeners love about our show. Thank you for joining me for another awesome celebration of you. If you were inspired by this story, please share it with your family and friends and hashtag Your Story Matters. I'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment on iTunes. And absolutely, please come to my website, hollydowling.com. Leave a comment there too, and while you're there, pick up your free gift. Most importantly though, just remember that your life is a gift from God. What you do with it is your gift back.